Okay, YouTubers, I have a Marquis Gold 5500 generator. Model number is 5HGJAB. Now, last year on a long trip, the generator shut down after about 2 hours of running. It would restart, but only for a short time, and it seems like every time I restarted it, it would shut off sooner. Anyway, I did the cheap thing and changed the spark plugs and cleaned the carburetor and did the fuel filters, which needed to be done anyway. They were all original generators, 10 years old, and it seemed to be working okay. However, as I found out a year later, on the next time we went on a long trip, 2 hours into the trip, shut down. The error code is 36, which is basically kind of an unplanned shutdown, no real reason given. With that said, when the generator is running, it runs perfectly. So, I did a little research, and a lot of people are complaining about the fuel pump on this generator, saying that when it gets hot, the seals expand and causes the motor to seize. So I did get a new fuel pump, and I'm about to put it in. Unfortunately, it's kind of hard to know if this is going to work because the fuel pump's actually underneath the generator, and it's not the generator heat that causes it to shut down, it's the fuel pump heat, which the fuel pump doesn't really get hot when it's sitting here in the driveway. It gets hot when you're on the highway on a 90-degree day, and the heat from the road comes up in the engine of, the exhaust, heats up the fuel pump. And I think I kind of proved this because the last trip I decided to be smart and not run the generator until the last hour of the trip. And I started it 7 hours into an 8-hour trip, thinking it would run for 2 hours before it overheats. And it shut down 10 minutes later. Now the generator was cold, but of course the underside of the RV had heated up, and that is where the fuel pump is underneath. So what I've done so far is I've loosened the bolts and taken off the wires. So now, actually, I'm about to remove the fuel line here from the fuel filter, and theoretically there won't be any gas in there if the bowl is dry. The last time I ran this, it stalled. I haven't touched it since. I'm really hoping that is dry. If it's not dry, then maybe I'm fixing the wrong thing. But this seems like the most likely cause is the fuel pump. So let's proceed. Okay, so I did put a few towels in here to catch the gas, which hopefully isn't in there. And I'm going to remove the hose. Hopefully. I might have to put the phone down, actually. Yep, I'm going to put the phone down. Success. Well, I think. I removed the fuel line, nothing dripped out. And I'm wondering if there's anything in this hose. So I'm just going to move this paper towel, put it down here, tip the hose a bit. Oh, some did come out. So that's interesting. Not necessarily a bad sign, because the fuel could have been right there and not actually going up any further. Like I said, nothing, not even a single drip came out of the fuel filter. So I'm still thinking that it is probably dry in there. So I will continue and replace this fuel pump. Okay, I've got all the bolts out here. The fuel pump is loose. Get the fuel line clamped, hopefully tight enough. I've got a full tank of gas, so I don't want that leaking out. And this should go through this hole here. Yeah, it's a little, there we go. There's going to be some gas for sure that comes out here, so let me just get some towels ready. Probably more towels than that. Alright. I am probably going to get some new fuel line actually, so I might continue this later. A little bit of gas, not too much. Okay, so here it is. This is a pretty new fuel filter, so I'm gonna save that. I will get new hoses. Overall, very little fuel dripped out of this entire assembly. So that's good, I think. We'll see. Okay, I'm back. It's actually been a couple hours. I ended up going to a few auto stores, mainly because last summer when I started having problems, I replaced the fuel filter and noticed that the fuel line was cracked up where the fuel filter was. And at the time, I didn't have any options but to reuse the fuel line, so I actually cut about ½ an inch off the fuel line, which worked, but it made the fuel line a little bit too short. It was really tight. So anyway, since I had the fuel lines off, you should probably always replace fuel lines when you're working with them. And you know, 90% of engine fires are usually because of old cracked fuel lines. These are 10 years old, so I think it's time. So I don't know if you can see this, but the original is kind of damaged because it had a worm drive clamp on it. And actually most of the fuel lines are connected with worm drive, and according to Onan, you should not be using that. You should be using this crimp kind, this is the only one that was actually on any of my fuel lines. These are hard to find. Actually, you can order them pretty easily, but you have to wait a few days. I didn't want to wait. So I researched it, and almost no auto stores carry these. However, someone did mention that Harley Davidson stocks them. And sure enough, they do. I went down there, you know, I picked up 5 of them, and unfortunately, they didn't have the tool to crimp them on. So I checked a few places, you know, AutoZone, Advanced Auto Parts, Napa. Nobody had the tool. So these are out. However, the last stop was Advanced Auto Parts, and they had an alternative which should work quite well. They had fuel injection hose clamps, and these they don't have the holes on the side like the worm drive clamps have, which is what damages the hose. They're also rated for high PSI, generators low PSI, so these are probably overkill, and they are stainless steel. So these are probably better than the crimp kind, and they cost less because you don't need to buy the crimping tool. So I'm going to use these. So I'm going to cut the hoses and put them on the new pump and show you what it looks like. And when this is all said and done, I'm going to run the generator probably for the rest of the day and see if it keeps running. I also think I'm going to test the old pump, hook it up to a battery, and heat it with a heat gun and see if I can get it to stop. That way I'll have some assurance that I fixed the right thing. Otherwise, I probably didn't. And, well, we'll see how it goes. Okay, so here is the new pump with the new hoses, the new clamps. It's ready to be installed. Okay, so the installation's complete. The new hose, the new clamp up by the carburetor. Put the protection back on down here to keep it from getting scuffed up or a hole. Probably the hardest part I thought was actually plugging these wires back in, because you can't really, it's very difficult to get in there and hold the connectors and squeeze them tight, but it is done. They are on quite well. And then on the underside here, you know, there's the old fuel filter connected to the new pump, new hose and clamps running over to the hard line. And actually I did notice while under here there is another place where I should replace the hose, or at least inspect it. The hard line goes along the fuel tank, and I don't know if you can see it, but it does go back to a rubber hose right there, and it goes up through the frame and I assume over to the fuel tank. Unfortunately, I don't think I can replace that one, so I'm just going to inspect it, and if there's a problem I'll probably have to have the dealer take care of that. So now really the only thing I left to do is just put the air filter back on and prime the pump and try starting it up. Let's see here. This might be a little too difficult to do with one hand, but let me try. Okay, there it is. All right, back together, no extra pieces. I do have to turn the power back on. I did shut off I actually unplugged the RV from the house, and I shut off the master power for the 12 volts. You know, originally I didn't do this, and of course, within about a minute of tinkering, I accidentally hit the start button, which scared the Jesus out of me, because I was in there with the fuel pump trying to disconnect it. So luckily it wasn't a problem, because I had already disconnected one of the fuel pump wires, so no fuel came out. So master battery on. So the generator should now have power to crank. So I'm gonna see if I can prime it. Actually, the air conditioner just came on, so we're probably not going to be able to hear the fuel pump. But okay, that actually was the fuel pump. You probably heard it. So it sounds like it has stopped now. So here goes nothing. And actually, before I do this, I'm going to shut off the central air conditioner, because I don't want to put a load on this generator immediately. Okay, so central AC is off. These fuses are on. So I think I'm ready. Let's see what happens. Everything looks nice and dry, so I'm going to put the cover on and let it run probably the rest of the day with the air conditioner on and see what happens. Alright, so now the cover's on. those of you who are wondering, this is the model number. So I'm going to unplug this RV from the house. And run the AC for a while. Alright, so the air conditioner just came on. The batteries are probably charging and the fridge is also on, which has been off for a while now, so my food could be bad, but if that's the price to pay for a generator that stays on, not a problem. Just gonna make sure the second compressor's on. Yes, it is. Refrigerator's on, AC. I just heard the second compressor kick in, so now we're low 20s. If I wanted to be really daring, I could turn the hot water heater on, but we'll not do that today because it does stall even with no load on it. So I think that would be overkill. Plus, I'm not sure if my hot water heater's full. So anyway, it's about lunchtime now, so I'm gonna go have lunch and do some chores and check on this in a few hours. Okay, one last experiment. My old fuel pump, I want to test it with some water. Now I know it works. The question is, can I get it to stop working? So I'm gonna hook this up to a battery and let it run for a while. And probably going to take a heat gun to it to warm it up because I think it's heat related. So try not to heat it up too much, but I do want to heat it up. So here goes. Alright. Whoop. So hopefully that doesn't fall in. It might. So let me get the heat gun and secure this a little better, and then I'll continue. Okay, so I zip tied it to the handle. Theoretically, it will not fall in. Yeah, I think it's good. So I'm going to run it. The pressure seems pretty good. So, definitely working. Now, I'm going to heat it up and hopefully not electrocute myself or melt the bucket or the wires. So I'm setting up the hot water. I haven't actually done it yet. And I'm noticing here the pump seems to be pumping a lot less than it was when I first turned it on about 4 minutes ago. Now, last time I ran the generator was cold. It ran for 10 minutes and then shut down about. So, it may not have anything to do with heat, but you know, it feels slightly warm, but it's been a few minutes since I applied the heat gun. I mean, this is really slowing down. Still probably enough to run a generator. So I'll check back in a few minutes, see what happens. So I am going to start adding some warm water. It's only been about 5 minutes now. You can see it is definitely not working as well as it was. So the bucket's a little full. I'm gonna empty some out. Continue with the hot water. Barely coming. I don't know if you see this, but it's dripping. It's hot, but I can still touch it. And actually, I still hear it pumping. So, I don't think I need to run my generator anymore. I think this is conclusive. I have a bad fuel pump. And the new fuel pump, hopefully, is better than this. Almost done. So I don't know if you can hear it. It is still spinning. Or I hear a ticking sound from it, but clearly not working. So just for kicks and giggles, I am going to try a different battery. I mean, this one is pretty small. I'm sure the voltage is down a bit. So I'll hook it up to a fresh battery and see what happens. Okay, here's the fresh battery just off the charger. Put it down here next to the other one. As you can see, still nothing. Still connected. I'm going to disconnect it and connect it to the new battery. Nothing. It actually is cooled down a lot. I'm just going to put a little bit of, well, cold water, except I don't have any. But, you know, I mean, it's not warm enough that I get burned, but it is quite warm. 110. So, there you have it. Bad fuel pump. Okay, so one last thing. It has been off now for about a minute. If I connect it to power, it is starting to work a little bit again. So definitely matches the symptoms I was seeing. You know, after it stalled, I'd let it sit for a little while and then I could start it up and it would run for a very short time and then stop again. So you see, when it's not running, it does restore somewhat, you know, to a fairly good flow. Not as good as it was originally when I first powered it up, but probably enough to power a light load. And I would suspect this is only going to last a few minutes, and it will go back to how it was before. So I hope this was helpful to everybody. Certainly makes me feel good that I did this. On a difficulty scale, it really wasn't that difficult. I think the biggest thing is just taking your time, getting the right parts, you know, don't force anything. And, you know, luckily it was this. You know, I read a few other things that suggested it could be the ignition coil. Thankfully it wasn't that, because the only way to replace that is to actually take the generator out of the RV and disassemble a lot of parts, and that was not something I was prepared to do. But on a difficulty scale, I'd say this was fairly easy. You know, just be careful with the gas. Make sure you clamp the fuel line, have rags around to catch the extra gas. Have eye protection. Even better, don't get anywhere near where it's going to drip, so you don't end up with it in your eyes or some other dangerous situation. I also disconnected the 12-volt power and the AC power to the RV. Some people say you should also disconnect the battery. I think that was a bit overkill, since I have a relay which kills the power to the 12 volts, and that's almost as good as disconnecting it. Anyway, I hope you guys find this useful. If you like it, please hit the like button, and maybe I'll make some more videos as things get fixed on the RV. Thanks. Okay, just a quick update. It's been about 2.5 hours since I tried running this pump. Just going to see if it has come back to life at all. A little bit. But not enough. And it's been 3.5 hours since I started the generator with the new fuel pump. And it's still running without issue. So I call this a success and post this video. Thanks for watching.